If you had one shot, or one opportunity to seize everything you ever wanted in one moment, would you capture it? Or just let it slip? Yo.
Hamadakyapi, Nick Tilsen and Machapi, Chante Washte Nape Chuzapalo. I greet you in my Lakota language this evening. How's everybody doing in Rapid City? You guys all right? How about those Minnesota Vikings? I want to start off by telling a story. And the story, as it goes, was there was a Lakota man who once had a vision of world peace. And he had this vision to create world peace amongst all people. So he went to the head of all the white people, and he said, "Who's the leader of all of the white people?" And they said, "It's the Pope." So he said, "All right, okay. I'm going to go see him. Where is he at?" And he's like, "He's over the ocean. He's in Rome." So he said, "I'm going to go there." So he packed up his teepee. Rode horseback all across the country, got to the ocean, rode across the ocean, got to the Vatican City, and they said, where does the Pope come out at? And I said, "There's a big balcony." He comes out on that balcony. So he said, "All right." And he put up his teepee and he made it perfect, nice and tight, real tight, made his teepee nice and tight, and he waited. Pretty soon the Pope came walking out on the balcony. He was wearing a tall hat. And he kind of looked out there and he went like this. And that Lakota man just looked at him, started shaking his head, taking the teepee down. But they said, all the tourists come over. "What are you doing? What are you doing? How come you're taking your teepee down? The Pope, he blessed you." I was like, "No, he didn't bless me. He told me to take that thing down and get the heck out of here." So I want to share that just because part of this story is about a shared history. And it's also about misinterpretations of our cultures. And I want to share with you a 7-generation concept, a concept of 7 generations, which is the concept and idea that you must look ahead 3 generations, back 3 generations, and honor the generation that you're in today. And in order to actually look forward, you have to look back. And so part of this is a recognition of where we have come. It wasn't that long ago that us as Lakota indigenous people had a sustainable lifestyle. And the sort of intertwining thing that I'm bringing up here is that this presentation and the things that we're doing on Pine Ridge, they're relevant to everything else that's happening in humanity today. And there's a huge question that we have to ask ourselves. And the big question is, how do we meet the needs of the present generation without compromising the ability of future generations to meet their own needs? And that is the foundation for so much of our work that we're doing at Thunder Valley and the movement that we're about. And so we have to acknowledge that it wasn't that long ago that we had a symbiotic relationship. We had an economy that was based on the buffalo that provided jobs. There was at one time in the history of Oglala Lakota people in which we had 0% unemployment. And it took leadership. It took people with vast leadership to have the kind of societies that we had once had as indigenous people. And in the period in which manifest destiny fueled a difference in ideology, a difference in politics. And at the heart of so much of that ideology was our relationship to resources. And we had a whole different relationship to resources. Indigenous people believed that the buffalo was our brother. We believed in the stewardship of land. We didn't believe that it could be owned. These ideologies clashed and created huge amounts of colonization and oppression of our communities and our people. The land loss wasn't just about losing land. It was about a connection to our spirit. And so I share these things because this is an important part of our history that we have to recognize, much of which is not talked about in schools today. Much of it is not shared. During the period of the Industrial Revolution, when this country was becoming the richest, most powerful country in the world, indigenous people were experiencing the exact demise. So when this country reflects on its democracy and reflects on the capitalistic society that we live in today and talk about America's victories, you have to understand indigenous peoples have an entirely different relationship with that. The other thing is this assault on our identity and our spirit as indigenous people, as Lakota people. This was part of policy. It was part of an agenda. The idea of kill the Indian and save the man. During the border school era, the familial breakdown of our families, to take children away from a multi-generational home, put them in boarding schools, require them to cut their hair. These things were that was the progressive thinking of the time. That was the progressive. So I invite you to think about the things that we think are the progressive today. Are they really? 100 years from now, 200 years from now, are we going to be thinking and embracing our ideology as progressive? Then we began to resist as a people and began to build a movement for change. And it wasn't a surprise that this whole entire movement was founded in identity, founded in culture, founded in spirituality and resistance, because our resistance was key to our survival and to our prosperity. Today, the Pine Ridge Indian Reservation, made up of 3 million acres, roughly 40,000 people living there, one of the most extreme pockets of poverty in America. In fact, 7 of the 11 poorest communities in all of America are Indian reservations, and they're all in the top 7 are in South Dakota. These are huge challenges that we're up against, and all of the societal challenges that come with that. Native American youth are 8 times more likely to commit suicide than almost any other ethnic group in America. I had the honor to be part of a cultural and spiritual movement that started taking place about 15 years ago, of young people returning to the Inipi, returning to the sweat lodge, returning to the ceremonies, returning to the things that heal us, that help us. And out of this renewed, many people that were part of this movement came out of gangs, came out of drugs and alcohol, came out of the struggles that we were raised, many of us that were raised in, and we fought for something better and bigger than ourselves. And out of this came a huge sense of responsibility of what are we going to do? I mean, this is extreme third world poverty right smack dab in America, and what are we going to do about it? And one day we were sitting outside of the sweat lodge and we were watching the fire burn down, and we started talking kind of negative about the way that our res is and how come we can't improve it, how come we can't change it. And when we went into the Inipi, the ancestors shared a message, and I share this message with you. And the message that they shared with us was, how long are you going to let other people decide the future for your children? Are you not warriors? It's time to stop talking and start doing. And they said, don't come from a place of fear and come from a place of hope. That is what inspired us to create Thunder Valley. And in language, we would call this iglu tokcha, our transformation. And our hope is, by the work that we're doing, it's like casting a stone in a pond and creating a ripple effect outward for change in the world. At the heart of our work is about tearing down barriers and the silos, because we believe that the silos is what separate us, and the silos are what perpetuate part of the problem. The heart of our decision-making about our work is about the balance between people, planet, and prosperity. It doesn't matter if we're talking about a social enterprise, if we're talking about development decisions, if we're talking about businesses, or if we're talking about programs that are going to improve people's quality of life. It has to have those balances of people, planet, and prosperity. And I think these are themes and decisions that you don't have to be on Pine Ridge to think about. These are things that Rapid City could be thinking about, Manhattan could be thinking about, Tokyo could be thinking about. We call it an ecosystem of opportunity. So it's not one thing that we're doing, it's an entire ecosystem. And this ecosystem is made up of 9 different initiatives. These 9 different initiatives that make up our entire ecosystem of creating opportunity for us on Pine Ridge. Regenerative community development. This is the concept and idea of building regenerative community 100% from scratch, based in Lakota and Indigenous values. We went through a series of community planning processes 2 years ago, broke ground on a 10-year, $60 million development that's underway. And it's it's exactly 78.2 miles from here. And so I invite you to come there and to see the work that's happening there, because it's the idea of building a 21st century community, meeting the needs of the present generation. Housing and home ownership is a fundamental part of our work, so that we're not just creating housing, but we're creating the ability for people to own their own homes. And so financial inclusion and the building of community wealth is fundamental to this ecosystem. The Lakota language. The average age of a Lakota speaker is 72 years old. In the past 10 years, 70% of the Lakota speakers alive have passed away. That means that Lakota is an endangered language. There's about 11 to 14-year window that we have to save this precious language. And so we have a comprehensive initiative that starts with an immersion child care center. And we have graduates from that immersion child care center. And amazing teachers like Matt Rama, Laura Ketches, Peter Hill, Gloria Warrior, these teachers that are teaching and bringing back the Lakota language. Workforce development is fundamental too, preparing our workforce. And so this program we have is focused on 18 to 26-year-old young people who are out of school and unemployed. And it gives them an opportunity to engage in sustainable construction in the development and build personal confidence through construction. And then the equity built through that process gets passed on to a low-income Native American family working to achieve home ownership. So you can kind of start to see this ecosystem beginning to feed off of one another. Our food sovereignty initiative is a huge part of our work. You know, there's 3 million acres on Pine Ridge. 97% of our food comes in on trucks. There's something wrong here. And our people are experiencing huge amounts of health disparities. And so our work in our food sovereignty initiative is about building local food systems that improve the health of the people, regenerate the ecosystems, and regenerate the economy, and making sure that the food system is a reflection of our community and our people based on principles of self-determination. Social enterprise is about creating social enterprises, worker-owned enterprises that lean towards building community wealth. So that we're not just a collection of different programs, and we're not just a developer at Pine Ridge, but we're launching several different businesses. We're launching a women-owned quilters cooperative in February. We're launching a Native American worker-owned construction company, a property management company, these things that begin to scale impact and social change in our communities. Youth leadership is also fundamental. We end up having a lot of young people that don't have a lot of opportunities. You know, one example about this program is we employ a lot of young people to create a lot of other opportunity for other young people. For example, we noticed that there was very little activities or sports activities for young people 5th grade and under. So we employed the high school age kids to be the coaches and the referees for the kids 5th grade and under. And it met a basic need. It helped create some opportunity, but it ended up it started having our folks see each other as leaders. So intertwined with that was really about leadership development. Today, Thunder Valley employs over 100 people on the Pine Ridge Indian Reservation. What started off as an idea over a decade ago has grown into an entire movement. Through our regional equity initiative, we have engaged in some of the most historic comprehensive planning in the history of the Oglala Sioux tribe, and have created in its first ever regional plan for sustainable development. And that plan has been officially adopted by the tribe, and over the past 48 months has leveraged close to $50 million new dollars of investment into Pine Ridge in the form of roads, water, sewer, electricity, housing, and programming. Art and culture is in everything that we do. It's in our youth programming, it is in our buildings, it is in our design, it is art and culture is part of the DNA of Thunder Valley. And our work is really making sure that the communities that we're building are a reflection of ourselves. A couple key things that I want to say before we finish up here is that this is a lot that we got going on. But I've always said since the beginning that our solutions have to be at least as big as the challenges that we're faced with. Otherwise, we're not going to see change. And we're not doing this alone. We have dozens and dozens of partners. In fact, we have this fundamental belief that partnerships move at the speed of trust. And when trust is built, anything is possible. And so I'm honored to have been a part of this movement to relay this message. I want to end by sharing a video. 2016, it represented one of the most, it represented one of the biggest uprisings of indigenous people in the past 150 years in the rise in Standing Rock. But the protest in Standing Rock wasn't just about a pipeline. It was about these fundamental crossroads of where we are at in humanity. Of are we gonna really build the communities of tomorrow? So this video is about two front lines. The front lines of defending what we have today and building the communities of tomorrow. This is two front lines.
If you're going to find resiliency on this planet, you're going to find it amongst indigenous people. It's part of our lived experience. There is a line drawn in the sand. It's about humanity's ability to live on this earth.
Over 100 years ago, where I sit here today, racehorse, he had a way humbly, a dream. Then there's a time when all the people would unite under the sacred tree.
Standing Rock represented our people coming together and rising up. We responded with prayer and action. The world woke up to these issues. The world is a different place today because of the actions we have collectively taken. The decisions we make right now not only decide what the next 7 generations are going to look like, we're deciding if there's going to be a next 7 generations. And our answer is yes, there is. And we're gonna fight to make that happen. We want to share that with the world. What we're doing here at Thunder Valley is creating an idea of what is possible. Reconnecting to our food source, reconnecting to our energy source, reconnecting to our language and culture. We're fighting and building for our future, and by that creating opportunities that are a reflection of our people, our spirituality, and our identity. In the process of doing this, we're reclaiming our power. We have to continue to fight on the front lines and stop these companies while building the communities of tomorrow.
What you guys think? I'm gonna end on one final point here, that the work at Thunder Valley is about two things. It's about that we have a fundamental belief that there's a change maker in each and every one of us, that all of us have change makers within inside of us. Two, that it's about building community power. And that power, you don't have to go searching for it. It already exists in the community. It is amongst the people. It is amongst the spirit. No matter what community you're talking about, you have to ignite it. You have to cultivate it. You have to nurture it. And you have to find it. Thunder Valley's work is not about building buildings. It's not even about creating jobs. It's about building community power. Thank you.